Welcome everybody from the Spark Systems YouTube channel. It is great to have you here today. Once again, we're continuing to look at our urban parking system that's been designed and developed in Enterprise Architect. In the last few videos, we've been looking at requirements modeling and management, and we're going to continue with that series today. In particular, we're going to be looking at scenarios in relation to requirements. So in the last couple of videos, we've looked at internal requirements and constraints, and now we're going to continue on looking at scenarios. So my name's Scott Hebbard. I'm joined by Stephen McGuire. Welcome, Stephen. What can you tell us about scenarios and how to model and use them with respect to requirements in Enterprise Architect?
Thanks for the introduction, Scott, and always a pleasure to be here. Yes, we're going to be looking at scenarios. Now, some people in the audience may associate these with use cases, but they're also a very powerful technique to use with other elements, including classes and components, for example. Let's get started, Scott, and dive into this topic. I always like to start by setting my perspective. Up in the top right-hand corner of the application, I can drop down a list of perspective sets. I've been doing some threat modeling, so I have that perspective set now. I can drop that down. I want to look at the requirements perspective set and requirements under there. I could look at decision modeling or business rules modeling or data flows, but I'm going to choose requirements. Select that one, the builder page pops up, and again, you're confronted with a number of patterns that you can then choose to inject into your model, getting great productivity gains, not just for requirements, but there are thousands of patterns in there for all sorts of different disciplines and languages. Scott, I want to do things from first principles as always, so I'm going to close the builder page there, and now I'm going to locate the element that I want to set these scenarios for. In earlier videos on this, the topic of requirements, we've looked at the internal requirements and the constraints for a parking station. So the kind of structure that you go to pay for your parking when you're in a particular zone. Let's click on our structural models here using the navigation cells to find what we're looking at. I want to go to the class model there. I can click on that. Again, we can preview that and we can see that the payment station is there. That's the one I want. That's just a preview, but let me click through to the actual diagram. Enterprise Architect opens up the diagram and I can scroll down there to look at the payment station. Now you can see that I've got a number of other compartments being displayed, and we also talked about the use of the inspector window. So the inspector window is open there. If it were not open, we could easily open it. I'm going to click close there for the minute and go to the start ribbon, the all windows panel there, the design item, and click on inspect there. So that's a useful thing to do. The window pops up now and you can see that the requirements constraints are all listed there. And we can select those and look at the notes changing as we work through this. That notes window is down in the bottom right-hand corner there. And we also have another tab here or another item here called scenarios. So let's have a look at that. And we can do this in a number of different ways, Scott. We're going to enter a scenario here. We can either do it here and say new scenario. We can do it in the from this diagram by launching the properties window. So if I launch that, I've pulled up the attribute there. I just want the actual element properties, and I can look at scenarios there and add a new one here. So let's do it in this location, and we'll have a look at, there's a third window where we can do this as well. So let's choose a basic path, and we'll call this the basic path. We'll put a dash there, and we'll give it a name and say user pays, or put successfully.
So when you're saying scenarios, are you talking about a series of steps that the user is going to undertake when they're paying for parking?
Yeah, great question, Scott. And this always comes up for people, and I guess it comes up with the debates between, agile work using the user story and the difference between that and the use case. You're right, we can put a series of steps in, but we can also keep it back at a level of abstraction or detail above that and just say, look, all we want to do really is to put in the different ways that this thing, this particular action of paying for parking goes. So we will show how to put the details in, but it's quite a reasonable thing to do, just to be keeping up at the level where you're just putting in description to these. So I'm going to put
Okay.
a description in here, but it's a great question, and it does open up some very fertile and robust debates about this topic. This represents the sunny day scenario, a term that's used a little bit in use case modelling, where the user approaches the machine and pays for parking using their preferred method. The payment is accepted and the session and payment are recorded. So let's say save to that. And Scott, further to your point, you can see down here there's a button called Structure Editor. Let's not do that for the moment. Let's just put in some other scenarios. So this one here, it defaulted to the basic path. We've also got an exception path and an alternate path there. I'm going to say new here. So an important thing to say, I want a new one of these. And let's put in an option here for the case that happens as an alternate path here, and I'll call it scenario B. Spelled that right, and I haven't. Scenario B, and the naming is up to your own organisation, and we'll call it insufficient funds.
Okay.
So what happens when someone goes to make a payment and there's insufficient funds? So the sunny day scenario was talking about everything that can happen when everything goes well, and this is the case where there's insufficient funds. So let's put in some details in here, and I'll say the user, and I might just put in here the motorist. Yeah, and in this case, the motorist is acting as the surrogate for, it could be a passenger that's doing this, but the motorist is the surrogate for this action. The motorist does not have sufficient funds to pay for the parking. So that's the scenario. I can put in lots more details in that if I want to about that, but let's leave it like that for the moment, and I'll save that. And let's put in a new alternative, and you can see there that I've put in an alternate scenario. I'll go new again, and I'll put in another alternate scenario, and this one will be scenario C, and I'll call this one machine malfunction.
And what's the difference between an alternate and an exception?
Well, again, that's a debatable point, Scott, but let's put in exception there. Something goes wrong. So the exception is that something has happened that is not working. So let's put in here the payment station produces an error that prevents the motorist from completing the payment. So again, we haven't listed those. We can quite easily list them. You can see there's a bullet point there. We could list a whole lot of different conditions under which that could happen, but that's an exception one there, Scott. We'll save that. So we can keep going and listing all those alternate paths. And you mentioned the scenario, the fact that you could list this as a series of steps as you would do in a use case diagram. And we can do that with the structure editor there, Scott. So I'm just going to close this window for the moment, and just to show these elements that are popping up in the diagram and the inspector window. So in the inspector window, we can see we've got a basic path set there, the different scenarios there, scenario B, insufficient funds, and you can see the icons that are giving us some indication about what type of path it is. So we haven't got them displayed in the diagram. In previous videos, we showed that. We simply right mouse click on the element, go to the compartment visibility, and this is compartment visibility for the element itself. If we wanted to do it for the diagram, we can go click in some white space and say in the compartments window there, we could display it for all.
And that's
elements.
why the attributes are displayed, because they're done at a diagram level.
Exactly, Scott. And if I turn that off, you can see that will turn them all off there. You can turn them back on again. So let's now use the compartment visibility for just the element, and I'm going to look at scenarios there. So I'll click on that one there, and now we've got the scenarios being displayed as well. So if I want to look at those basic path, alternate, and I can just simply double click on this and it will bring up that scenario. So, Scott, the other thing is that we can view these in a list, and sometimes this is an easier way to work. So if I look at this here, I can say scenario list, and that pops up the list. And remember, this is context sensitive for the element. If I click on another element, it doesn't have scenarios.
They disappear.
They disappear. So there again, we can see that the basic path of scenario B, scenario C, and we've got the notes in here. And here we've got this structured editor. So structured scenario edit. So we can do it from there, or you remember in our dialog box when we were in this element as well, we had that option with the scenario selected there. We can use the structure editor. So we select the particular one that we want. Let's do it from this one here, and we'll go in here and we'll say we want a structured scenario for this particular item. So let's have a look at that now, and we'll enter some things in about this one, about this particular scenario. So the first thing that's going to happen is the user approaches kiosk. Let's say that's station. Change in terminology that we've had. Notice that this hasn't been set yet, but as I click on this, user approaches, and I'm going to change this to motorist as well. We are using motorist as the default word for the person that's paying for this parking, albeit that it could be a passenger. So the motorist approaches the station and touches the screen. You can see now that the little icon over here in the step has changed to being a user, and the next thing that's going to happen, they've touched the screen, and the next thing that's going to happen is that we'll put those notes in there. The system displays a welcome message. So let's click now and add another step, and you can see now that there's a little icon that this is being referred to as being a system.
So Enterprise Architect's doing that automatically.
Exactly. So Scott, I'm going to get you to perform some of your time travel magic, and I'm going to get you to, I'll complete the diagram, and we'll see you back here in a few seconds.
Welcome back, everybody. I've done a little bit of editing magic, and now we've completed the scenario. And I'll hand over to you, Stephen, to tell us a little bit about the various steps that we've modelled here in our payment station scenario.
Thanks, Scott. Good to be back. Yes, we have completed a number of steps. Just to go back a little way and talk about this, we were doing this for a requirement. So here we have this payment station here, and we were looking at scenarios here for that payment station. We put our requirements in earlier, and we put our constraints in there. I'm just going to use the pan and zoom window there to zoom in a little bit on our element there and pan around a little bit. So we had requirements in, we had constraints in, and now we're putting the scenarios in. And we talked about the basic path and alternate paths and exception paths. So let's have a look at that again in our inspector window. We've got the basic path there, scenario A, which is an alternate path, and or the insufficient funds there. So we entered a different type of scenario while we were waiting as well, called license plate registration. But the one that we did the basic path for here was the user pays for parking, the basic path. We're calling it the sunny day scenario. So we can see the steps there, and we can see alternatively on the right, on the left-hand side there, we've got the actor icon, then the system icon, the actor icon. Now this happens a little bit like a game of table tennis, Scott, where the ball is bouncing from the user to the system. But you can see in places it is possible for the system to do two things. So the user enters the vehicle license plate, the system validates the plate format, the system calculates the fee and presents the cost and payment options there. So very powerful tool to be writing these details. But remember, you don't have to write the details. You can simply put in the basic path with a description, so you don't need to go down to this level. And the other thing, Scott, is that there are some very powerful facilities available as part of this scenario editor. So here we've got linking to test suites and internal test cases, external test cases. We can move the steps up and down using these little icons here. We can do all sorts of other things here, such as this one, manage their users context list, managing users cell context reference there. So we can see those contact references, and we've got that payment there. Electronic payments are made for a parking session. So links there. But one of the things I like to show, Scott, is the diagram generation. So this is a list of these steps, but I can also generate a diagram for that, and different types of diagrams: an activity diagram, activity with action pins, rule, state. Let's just do it as an activity with action there. So I'll click on that, and the system generates a diagram for me that lays out all of those steps. So that is incredibly useful. I can find that diagram in the browser there, and you can see that it's gone under there, under our parking station, in a activity graph node with actions there. So I can rename that if I want to, and let's call it, the payment station sunny day.
Yep.
Scenario steps. So we have it there. Useful thing about that, Scott, is then I can link other things to this these elements. And so the user selects pay for parking option. The system offers license plate entry forms. I can actually link a diagram or a diagram element that's related to this particular step, which allows me to to express the connection between other elements. So system offers license plate registration, vehicle license plate number there. And if I wanted to look at an element to do with that, I could look at my vehicle. I've got the registration number there. I can simply drag that onto the screen here and connect these elements up. The alignment happens for me. I could say that this thing is traced to that element there. And depending upon which way, see the trace working, that's there, and you can see the registration number there. So very powerful thing to do, to link those steps up to other elements. And also when you're describing this to users, it's sometimes easier to show them in a diagram and just work through the diagram and say, look, here are all the steps that are happening. So that's it, Scott, for the scenario editor. And remember, we can look at these scenarios down in our model here in this window. Again, we've got our requirements, our constraints, and our scenarios there as well. So lots of different options, and you can put in as many alternate paths as you need to.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much for that, Stephen. It's been great to see how powerful Enterprise Architect is for creating scenarios, for creating a detailed set of steps, for automatically creating an activity diagram from those steps, and then linking it back to other elements within the model itself. So really, really powerful stuff. To our audience, thank you so much for joining us today. We always appreciate your patronage, and we love having you view our videos, and we greatly appreciate it. As always, if you've enjoyed this video, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to the Sparx Systems YouTube channel. If you have any questions about scenarios, constraints, internal requirements, or requirements in general, you can reach out to Stephen using his LinkedIn and website credentials that are listed in the video description below. As always, Stephen, thanks so much for your time and energy today. You've made it look very easy for developing scenarios, and I can see that Enterprise Architect's doing a lot of work in the background, generating diagram, creating traceability, and making it a really, really powerful requirements management tool.
Always a pleasure, Scott. And remember, we've only just scratched the surface of the tool's potential.